Good. Just one question on what Tony's been talking about. Is one of the issues in relation to the fall of sanction detection rate the shortage of detectives? I think we're about 750 short. And the other point I was going to make was, if there are fewer officers on the street, the deterrent effect, for example, of the likelihood of getting stopped and searched is lower. And again, that can contribute through fewer officers. Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yeah, I think yes to both, in fact. I mean, no doubt we may touch on stop and search, but yes to the presence of officers. And then also in terms of the detective, you know, I've spoken several times in front of you in relation to what is, again, not a single issue. So we do have a limited number or a gap in detectives. As you are well aware, we're doing lots of things to try and fill that gap. But it's compounded by, we then equally have other demands that are drawing on our detective resource. So the growth in counter-terrorism policing draws on our detectives, the people investigating the Grenfell Tower fire draws on our detectives, and so on. So I think you're absolutely right. It has to have an impact on the detection rate across the piece.
Okay, anyway, can I go on to the subject I really want to talk about, which is tackling violent crime. And start off with, I think the target is 158 officers in the task force by July. How many officers and staff have you got on it at the moment?
So at the moment there are 45 more to come, police officers, who will be the second half of the kind of core task force. Those officers have now been selected. As I said to you, I think previously in the closed session that we had during PERDA, rather than just nominate and allocate, we wanted to, because this is going to be something that is going to last for some time, we wanted officers. We had over 500 officers who applied or expressed an interest in wanting to be part of the task force. We've selected those officers. That will go through the process of getting them posted over the next probably 4 weeks or so, and that will be the last 45 to come in. What we are also getting additionally through the funding that the Mayor has provided is we are going to be bringing in 15 civilian investigators to assist. So as you may be aware, in a number of issues, we go out to the market to retired detectives, retired officers who have particular skills who you can bring back in. So we are also bringing in some of those officers to assist us with the investigations and doing some of the work with obviously without a warrant card to support us.
Continue the same theme. The Mayor was seen on TV attending a raid by the violent task force, and most of the officers seem to be from the City of London Police, rather than the Met. I don't know if that was a trick of the camera, or
no, it wasn't a trick of the camera.
Or to what extent are you relying on the City Police to support you in this?
What we're relying on the City Police to do is and the British Transport Police for that matter, to provide us with extra over and above what we are doing. And I have to say, both of those organisations have been fantastic in providing us with additional resource so that rather than just do the one raid on that morning that the Mayor was at, we are able to do raids across London, which is what we are doing on a daily basis. So I make no apologies for utilising the kind of cooperative work that we do regularly with both City and BTP. If you think about BTP, particularly around the big providing additional resource for us, particularly, for example, Stratford, at the terminus there at Stratford, where there are a whole range of issues. Absolutely great work by BTP. So we work and use both of them. Yeah. I did smile myself when I saw that footage. But that for me is just we're using all the asset we can.
So when you call them BTP or City Police, they're not actually part of the violent crime task force?
No, they are not.
They're sort of drafted in for particular operations?
Both of them are really keen to be part of our process. They are one of the things that we do, as I've said before, we have this pod in the special operations room that is there 24 hours a day running all the activity around violence. That has a 10:30 in the morning call where everybody is coming in and we're looking at what we need to be doing, and both BTP and City of London are part of that process every day.
Okay. And next question is, to what extent are you relying on abstractions to fill in the gaps on the violent crime task force, and in particular dedicated ward officers? Because I've had reports in Camden of dedicated ward officers being taken off their dedicated role to support knife crime initiatives in Islington and Camden.
Well, it should be very rare for a dedicated ward officer to be taken off their ward to support them. Now, clearly, if activity is happening on their ward, then that's absolutely fine, I would say, to use them. But the number of abstractions is one of the key things that the Deputy Mayor holds us to account around and is obviously measured locally. So that should not be happening. Are we bolstering the violent crime task force activity with local officers? Of course we are, to try and as you are aware, every borough, so the BCUs, but individually every borough has a plan of all the activity that they will be doing to counter the violent crime. And then the task force fits into that plan. So it's not simply what the task force bring, it's the force multiplier then of using the resources locally.
Well, certainly understand that if there's something particular going on in a particular ward, the DWOs would be involved in that. That's obvious. But the report I had was from was that a particular ward officer, for example, had had 2 shifts disrupted over the previous 2 weeks where they'd been taken off to do knife crime elsewhere. I think that's now stopped in Camden because I raised it at the time.
I hope so. That should not be what's happening. If that was what happened, it should not have been happening.
Yeah, okay. And the next point I wanted to ask was about cancelled rest days and to what extent that's impacting and to what extent you're relying on cancelled rest days for supporting this work. According to the BBC at the weekend, there were 189,000 rest days cancelled last year. I presume that's not all for violent crime, but for other things as well. But that, by my reckoning, if you've got 30,000 officers, and obviously they're not all affected the same way, that's at least 6 days a year on average, which is an awful lot, and presumably some a lot more than that.
If so, it is not an even. There will be times where we have to cancel people's rest days. There are times where you will cancel them in advance and it's all planned through and you will re-roster those rest days. There are times where it has to be done at short notice. 2017 was an extraordinary year. If you think of the 3 terrorist incidents and the fire, and then you add in all the other things that happen, and when you get a rise in violent crime, you then get obviously crime scenes to deal with, and crime scenes are often complex and multi-sited, and they all need to be guarded for the period of investigation. So it was a relatively extraordinary year. We monitor how many rest days we are cancelling. Sometimes that is unavoidable, and if you go into certain specialist units where you've got fewer people with the skills, it can be quite a challenge. But then it's about the local leadership teams really monitoring and driving down in terms of making people get those rest days re-rostered. But I would be lying if I said we're not under pressure, because we have been under pressure now for a considerable period with just the sheer tempo of operational activity that is required. But to suggest that the work that the task force are doing is reliant on cancelled rest days is not true. And again, I know there's been stories around loads of leave being cancelled, which again that would be a very extraordinary thing if there are times when we need to do it because of the job we do, but it's not a routine thing.
Okay, so that's not going to be the new normal?
No, it certainly is not, no. And it's something that we bear down on repeatedly.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I suppose it's a reflection again of the previous discussion about not having enough officers to go around. How are those who lose the rest days compensated? Do they get the rest days back another time, or do they get overtime pay for it?
Yeah, well, you get the ideal is what you do is you re-roster the rest day. You re-roster. Sometimes there will be pay for a rest day that's cancelled, but we normally will do it in the process so that we're giving enough notice, because if we give sufficient notice, you re-roster the rest day. If you're unable to give sufficient notice, then the officer will get the option.
So, can we have the figures for rest day cancellations up to up to the end of that?
Yeah, I mean, if you write,
obviously you don't have them now, but
no, fair enough. That's not.
I think that would be interesting to try and do a comparison.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
I am concerned that we're seeing officers effectively being drafted in all over the place to plug gaps.
Yeah, they're not, and again, it's the immediate cancellation will happen where you've got something that spontaneously occurs. The majority of what we're doing around the task force, and this is the whole point of having that pod in the special operations room, is that we are planning. This is being planned on the boroughs, it's being planned centrally, and there's coordination about the activity we use, how we use the violent crime task force, how we use the additional police support units that we may come on to talk about that we are deploying as well. The whole, and this is true of policing always, you are attempting to constantly anticipate and plan obviously the resource time, because our people need to get time off. Our people need to be able to go and kind of defuse from what they're doing at work, and it is not sensible for us to be just burning people out.
Caroline.